It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, cleared for takeoff. The government gives its backing to the third runway at Heathrow Airport. Well, it's a plan that's been on the cards for decades. It's been kicked into the long grass a number of times. But the Chancellor says it is badly needed and will drive growth here in the UK. Rachel Reeves says the plan won't affect the government's net zero commitments. Campaigners strongly disagree. We'll get both sides of the argument tonight. And we'll hear from those who could be forced from their homes if this third runway goes ahead. Also coming up, the charity set up in memory of Captain Tom stops using his name. Well, he raised millions of pounds for the NHS during the pandemic, but the foundation has been dogged by claims of misconduct and mismanagement by his family. Plus, I'll speak to the 11-year-old boy who used his birthday money to start a food bank in his garden shed. And Bridget is back. We'll be on the red carpet in central London for the return of everyone's favourite singleton. All that to come, and much more on the UK Tonight. Well, we start tonight with a plan that's been talked about since the 60s and kicked down the road repeatedly. But here we are in 2025, and the Chancellor confirming that the government is supporting a third runway at Heathrow. Rachel Reeves says this expansion of Europe's busiest airport is badly needed to help deliver growth in the UK economy. But it is, of course, a controversial decision, welcomed by business groups, but condemned by climate campaigners, the Conservatives, and Labour's own Mayor of London, Sir Sadiq Khan. Well, tonight we'll get the economic argument for a third runway. We'll hear the environment argument as well. And we'll get the view of the human impact of all of this from the families who could be forced from their homes if it goes ahead. Our business correspondent Paul Kelso has our first report tonight.
I challenge any estate agents to find us something similar that's not in Scotland.
3 generations of Christian's family have lived in an English home that really does look like a castle, but his children may be the last. Their misfortune, it's in Longford, a village that will be levelled to make way for Heathrow's third runway.
Being displaced from your home is deeply distressing. We've been persecuted by Heathrow in particular, their actions and inactions, and also by the government and their inability to make decisions when they needed to say no to the third runway.
Government support means local objections, including questions about net zero and air pollution, can be swept away, delighting Heathrow's chief executive, but not the boss of Europe's biggest airline.
There is an ambition of government to show plans for economic growth. Now, we are an essential part of that plan.
Rachel Reeves is talking rubbish, and she knows she's talking rubbish. You know, she has failed to deliver any growth in the first year as Chancellor. Now, my question to Rachel Reeves is, give us your best estimate when that third runway will be open, because I think it's 2040 or 2050.
Heathrow has 2 existing runways. The third will be built to the northwest, where 750 homes in Longford and half of Harmondsworth will be demolished. The busiest section of Britain's busiest road, the M25, will be moved into a tunnel and the 2-mile-long runway built on top.
The decision to finally expand here at Heathrow is in part defensive to protect the economic advantages that come from having a major hub airport, but it's also meant to send a signal that after decades of indecision and delay, Britain can build major infrastructure projects. None of it, though, will happen quickly. It could be 5 years before there's planning permission for a third runway, another decade before it's open.
There was support too for a redevelopment around Old Trafford in Manchester, as well as other airports and the Lower Thames crossing.
Large infrastructure projects, of course, by their nature are long-term, and in a lot of ways that's great because actually we can guarantee business opportunities and jobs for 20 years. But remember, smaller businesses can see immediately future investment opportunities so they can begin to create jobs and invest in their businesses.
The Chancellor has set her course. Now we all wait for the impacts to land. Paul Kelso, Sky News at Heathrow.
Well, Rachel Reeves promised to remove barriers to growth when she set out her plans today, saying that she's prepared for the fight that could be heading her way. Rachel Reeves set out her argument and spoke to our economics editor, Ed Conway.
Can you tell us how much growth has there been since you came into office? The economy has stagnated now for more than a decade, and it takes more than 6 months to turn that around. But I am determined to be the Chancellor who does turn around this country's growth performance, because we're not achieving our potential today. And it means that working people have seen their living standards deteriorate, and British businesses have not been able to fulfil their potential in exporting around the world and making the productivity gains. And that's why today I announced a number of significant investments with business in a third runway at Heathrow, the Oxcam growth corridor, and also support for the new stadium and the development around that at Trafford in Greater Manchester.
But to be clear, it is basically zero growth since July. So, I mean, do you feel you have any responsibility for part of that?
Well, the performance of our economy for over a decade now has been incredibly...
No, but specifically since July, I wanted to talk about.
Well, but this is just continuing a theme of the last 14 years, and it's the theme that I'm determined to turn around. But it's not possible in 6 months to put everything right. But what you have seen in the first 6 months of this Labour government is inflation at 2.5%, closely anchored to the bank's target. Bank of England have cut interest rates twice, and wages are rising at twice the rate of inflation. Do we need to go further and faster? Absolutely we do, which is why I've made significant announcements today, and will continue to do so as we leave no stone unturned in that quest to meet the #1 mission of this government, which is to grow the economy.
Well, let's get into this, shall we? I'm joined now in the studio by Greenpeace UK's Programme Director. She is Amy Cameron. And the National Secretary of the GMB Union, Andy Pendergast, is here as well. And alongside them, Paul McGuinness, who lives close to Heathrow and is the chairman of the No Third Runway Coalition. So deep breath, plenty to discuss here. I was reflecting a little earlier. This has been something that's been talked about since the 1960s. And here we are in 2025, and the Chancellor thinks this is the kickstart the UK needs for growth. Paul, I'm going to come to you first, because this has a huge impact on millions of people. Yes, it's focused in London, but if you look at some of the numbers involved, we're talking about 2,000 extra planes a day, 0.5 million more people brought under the flight path. In total, 2 million people affected by this. What were your thoughts when you heard the Chancellor unveil this not-so-new plan today?
Well, as you say, this is almost perennial. It comes round. And you asked earlier, how do people feel about this? People, particularly in the villages around Heathrow, are absolutely horrified. They've lived under this spectre for years. And some of them feel almost like a discarded item has been pulled from the bin in order to go for growth. You have, I noticed as the backdrop behind us, a picture of Heathrow as it currently is. One of the things which they are very keen to stress is that the third runway actually is a bit of a misnomer. What the plans are, Heathrow's plans, it's the erasing of 5 villages. It's destroying homes. It's diverting rivers. It's tunnelling over the busiest junctions on the M25 in order to increase the size of the current Heathrow by an area which is larger than Birmingham International Airport, in order to fly as many planes as Gatwick are flying now. It's not a third runway, it's not just an addendum strip. It's actually a new airport, which will be the second largest airport in the UK, which will be built right next to the first, which is the current Heathrow operation, which statistically, as you have identified, already has an adverse impact. It is the most disruptive airport in the world. And the Transport Select Committee have identified that were this plan to go ahead, up to 2.2 million more people will be adversely impacted by noise.
You're right to point out the mind-boggling scale of this, because when you call it a third runway, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? But I think what put it into perspective for me, the scale of it, is that they're going to have to build it over the M25. So anyone that's travelled on the M25, anyone that's been that unfortunate, knows how busy it can be. It's 10 lanes of traffic being put underground. Amy, let's talk about the environmental impact, because that is a big discussion factor in this, always has been. And a lot of people saying, how can you green light Heathrow expansion and still uphold green commitments, which are written in law now?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the first thing I want to say is there was lots to like in what the Chancellor spoke to today, right? Not least that she herself said that climate change and tackling the climate crisis is one of the biggest industrial economic opportunities that we have in the 21st century. So we want to kind of talk to that while recognising that, yes, tackling the climate crisis can result in great things for the economy and for jobs specifically, but Heathrow is not the one. Before we even get into the climate emissions, you know, there's real question marks over whether the economic benefits of this are real and who they'll be felt by. In a context where we know that business flights are falling, the vast majority of flights are being taken by a really small percentage of the population, so 70% of flights taken by 15% of people. Meanwhile, the things that we do know for a fact are that noise is going to go up, air pollution is going to go up, climate emissions are going to go up, and the economic benefits are really unclear. So where we want to start from this conversation is frankly, let's take Heathrow off the table because it's a white elephant. As climate campaigners, we are super committed to the idea that we need industrial growth, but we need it in the right sectors. So why are we picking up old, discarded, polluting projects from the discard pile instead of focusing our energy on sectors and on projects which could be delivering benefits for people straight away and which are actually the industries of the future, where we'll see good, secure jobs for years to come. So I really want to push back against this being a kind of green versus growth, because the Chancellor herself recognised that's no longer the case. It's about the fact that Heathrow is not the right project for us to unlock the economic and climate benefits of the green transition.
That's an interesting point, and I was listening to the boss of Ryanair on the Politics Hub, the programme that came before us, and I didn't think that I would hear sort of the boss of Ryanair chiming and agreeing with Greenpeace, but he was saying, you know, this is a big distraction. You know, it's, you know, if you want real growth, scrap airport and travel taxes. That would do, you know, enhance growth in the UK tomorrow rather than, you know, in 2040, 2050, because if this happens, it's some 20 years away. But let's try and look at some of the positives, and I want to bring you in on this, Andy, in terms of, we know this is going to be good for big business. We know this is going to be good for foreign investors. But a lot of people watching this programme tonight will be saying, you know, if we're concentrating on growth in the UK, how is this going to benefit me? Who else benefits from this outside big business and foreign investment?
Well, firstly, there's going to be tens of thousands of jobs created as a result of this. You know, there's jobs in construction, which we desperately need. In the south. Well, yes, but in the south. But when you look at these big construction projects, and we deal with a lot of places like Hinkley Point, actually, the amount of people who come down to Scotland for those jobs, you have people who move all over from the UK.
Isn't that the problem? People coming to the south of England?
Well, no, because a lot of them don't stay permanently. So when you look at the big projects, and if you go to, say, the Hinkley Point, there's 14,000 people on site. Some of them are from the local area, and huge numbers of apprentices. But lots of people have moved there, and they will move to other projects. So what we have is a big workforce who actually move with this. Secondly, there are, you know, the jobs in the airport, which are going to be long-term ones. And for us, it's also about industrial capacity. You know, we had 14 years in this country of absolutely anaemic growth. We need to turn it around. And although that
is this the right industry to concentrate on? Because, again, I go back to the boss of Ryanair, who said, you know, why are you looking at this industry? There's easier, cheaper things you can do that will make an immediate impact. This is just a big distraction. It's a look over here. You know, this has been kicked around so much. Why this old idea? There are so many other industries and so many other parts of the UK that could, well, that are crying out for this kind of investment.
Well, we're looking at, I mean, if you look at the government's plan, you know, we're working with lots of companies about growth in what used to be called the left-behind places. So you're looking at sustainable aviation fuel plants, you're looking at green hydrogen, you're looking at carbon capture and storage, you know, jobs that are supporting the move to net zero. And these jobs overwhelmingly are not in the South East. You know, these are jobs on Tyneside, on Humberside, in the various places that are left behind. But at the same point, we can't ignore the fact that what we have, particularly in London, is a kind of an hourglass economy, and this is going to create a lot of jobs in those areas. And a lot of people near that, and I know, you know, there's a number of people who are unhappy about the noise, but there's also huge swathes of West London, which ultimately you have entire families and generations who work at the airport.
Can I just throw something else in there that's not probably not as sexy as air travel? But trains, in terms of, you know, they're right across the country, badly in need of investment. We had a couple on the show this week who wanted to get from Cornwall to Crewe, and it was cheaper and easier for them to fly via Spain to get up to that area of the country.
But it's very interesting that you should have mentioned earlier, though, Michael O'Leary's points about passenger taxes when it comes to air. This is one of the reasons why rail cannot compete because aviation already has some tax advantages when it comes to fuel. I think it's very interesting, though, that Andy's speaking, if I can call you a trade union boss baron, for that's what you are, if that expression still applies. But you do represent the south of England.
Well, no, I'm national, so I represent people right across the UK and in Ireland. So ultimately, we look to make sure economic growth is right across the board.
Well, I'm glad that's the case. And one of the identifications in the policy document that originally supported this was that almost necessarily air traffic, in fact 170,000 direct international flights, would be sucked out, those are existing flights, out of regional airports and brought down to the overheated southeast. And when we look at growth, surely in this country what we are looking to achieve is growth all around the country. And I think it's very interesting that whenever we talk about aviation, we seem to have to talk about Heathrow. Very interestingly as well this week is this overall package that Rachel Reeves has delivered. She's also spoken today about Gatwick and Luton both getting the go-aheads. If you look at those two airports and then combine them with the two which have already been given the go-aheads, that's London City and Stansted, that will increase southeast aviation capacity by 60 million passengers a year. Now, that is a lot more than Heathrow was ever going to promise. And actually, we think it likely that in many ways that the aggregate package that she has announced has undermined the case a bit for Heathrow. We understand almost why they have chosen this as a project. You know, they want to bounce back from possibly having been accused of not being very positive about the economy. And in picking a project, they've picked Mission Impossible. As she says herself, 7 decades and it's got nowhere.
But there's a reason. How disappointing for the public when they were, teased this big speech on UK growth, and that's what people want. They want more money in their pocket. They want to feel better about their lives. And there's talk about Heathrow Airport. Here we are again. And, expansion at Heathrow Airport isn't going to affect the majority of the population. I know you talk about large jobs and people coming down, but, is there not another industry or another sector or something else that could be brought out that would have impacted more people?
Yeah, I think that I just want to kind of come to your point, because I think, it's absolutely right that you and your union should be advocating for jobs. There is a desperate need in this country for investment in the type of industries which will create good future-facing jobs right across the country.
And this is a long-term project as well.
100%.
But in a long-term project is long-term construction jobs and then permanent jobs afterwards. And I think one of the issues I have on this, and particularly with Greenpeace, and I think Greenpeace have done lots of good work, but you look at brilliant jobs being created by Sizewell, Greenpeace are against it. You talk about rail, you're against HS2. So unfortunately, it does often seem that these jobs are always somewhere else. And we do need to do big infrastructure projects. And considering, I think, your point around, yes, we need to invest in rail. Well, when we had the big infrastructure project, which ultimately would have led to less flights, Greenpeace came out against it.
Can I just bring in this animation? Carry on talking, but I just want to say, this animation has been created by the Air Traffic Control Service, NATS, which shows a typical day in the skies above London and the south-east, highlighting flights in and out of the 5 airports serving the region. Heathrow is in bright pink. The white lines are other flights using the airspace. So the skies are so busy, there's going to be an extra 2,000 flights a day coming from the bright pink one that is Heathrow. So let's just, that's quite an incredible animation. So we can talk over that. It just gives us a sense of, what's going on in the skies above us. I mean, the Sky Studio is really close to Heathrow, so we know all about the planes and the noise. What are the options for the environmental lobby to stop this, Amy? Because there was that big High Court battle in 2020, wasn't there, which went in favour of expansion plans. They were once again put on hold under Boris Johnson. And there's a Climate Change Act to say what you can and can't get away with. So what are your movements on this in terms of, it's not a done deal. Just because the Chancellor says it's happening doesn't mean it is.
No, absolutely not. And, we've already heard Sadiq Khan making very clear noises that he's likely to oppose it. And I think that, we will see opposition, both from local groups who are deeply concerned about the really meaningful impact on their local area, but also, from both national and local campaigning organisations and factions within the Labour Party who are rightly, first of all, deeply concerned about the climate crisis. And we shouldn't underestimate the real-world impact on economy economy and people that the climate crisis is already having. But I think, again, and I'm sorry to repeat myself, but I would so much rather be sitting here next to Andy and other colleagues, including Paul, and advocating for things, right? So we could spend all of our time as climate campaigners saying no, and I hear that.
What would you say yes to?
Rail infrastructure, for sure, and I know you can point to things that we haven't liked, but you still have to think sensibly about where and how and for who. We could be looking at gigafactories. We stood alongside the steel workers at Port Talbot, calling on the government to invest in green steel. They let that go by. We could be investing in renewables. We could be looking at upgrading our grid. We've got some of the leakiest homes in Europe. Why are we not insulating those? That would create jobs straight off the bat and bring people's bills down. So instead of using all of our energy on these deeply contentious, deeply unpopular, and frankly, economically fairly unsound projects, why are we not looking for the win-wins that bring climate campaigners, local campaigners and unions together?
Why do you think that is?
On the
Just a general view. Why do you think that is? Why do you think we're back at the third runway for Heathrow?
Well, it does feel like a bit of an unimaginative, broken record, as you say. But I think we've just identified something which is very interesting in this. The Climate Change Act has been mentioned. The Climate Change Committee said only last year, in terms of the 6th budget, that if there were to be expansion at Heathrow, it would almost certainly require some restrictions, possibly closures at other airports, mainly in the regions. Of course, that can work both ways. And now that we've had this slew of other expansions, it is not inconceivable that a time will arrive when Heathrow, if indeed they were to build this extra infrastructure, might be told that they could not use it. It is not inconceivable that the Climate Change Act and what are now legally binding strictures on us really make this project wholly uninvestable.
Andy, as the positive voice in supporting this, I want to give you the final word because, as we've been reflecting, if this does happen, it is 20 years away. So, a lot of work and a lot of jobs in the build-up to that time. I mean, look at 20, 40, 50. I'll probably long be retired by then, by the time it's finished. But just a final word on why this idea, why this is a good idea.
Well, look, I think this is not the only idea. And most of what you talked about in terms of gigafactories, in terms of a lot of the investment in green technology, this is what we're talking to the government.
That's all still going on.
It's all still going on. But the simple reality is we need more economic expansion where it matters. And I think, look, there's a couple of things. Firstly, in terms of net zero, it is an existential crisis. It is fundamentally the biggest issue we probably have ever had to deal with. But what we've seen in America really counts here, which is if we get this wrong, and you've talked about what's in law can be undone in 5 minutes, well, a little while longer. But if, look at America. America has gone from a position where a couple of months ago, they were leading the fight. There were huge investments in green technologies. All of that has gone with one election. And I think for us, the fight for net zero has to be one that takes the people with us. We already know that one of the parties, the battle lines for the next election is on net zero. And if we get it wrong, the real danger is we're talking to normal people about not having holidays, not having decent quality of life that they expect. And unfortunately, in a democracy, that's not deliverable. So we need steady progress. We have to deal with this. But if we get it wrong, we risk undoing everything. And what I would say is removing the ability of a lot of people to get jobs and economic growth will not help that process.
Andy Pendergast, thank you so much for having a little sip of tea there because I thought I was going to cough at the end of that. And you were making a very good point, so it was a very good note to end on. Andy Pendergast, National Secretary of the GMB Union, Paul McGuinness, Chair of the No Third Runway Coalition, Amy Cameron from Greenpeace. Thank you so much for your contributions tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, still to come on the UK tonight, there's a fresh crisis for the Church of England. The Bishop of Liverpool has denied allegations of misconduct. We'll have details on that story for you. Also coming up, why the Captain Tom Foundation is no longer called that. Plus, the Love Island star released on bail pending appeal after being jailed over a dog attack.
The only way to Gaza for us right now is with the Israeli military. The IDF had brought us in to show us a tunnel network under a residential neighbourhood.
The length of time it must have to have created these tunnels must have taken years.
At the end of the day, it's war at the top. It's war down here.
I'm Alistair Bunkle, Sky's Middle East correspondent based here in Jerusalem.
As we were filming, there was a gun battle in the next street.
This neighbourhood, the Israeli military say, was the stronghold of Hamas's Rafah brigade.
It was just after 6:30 a.m. when the first shots were fired.
I remember everything. It was a day that I don't think I'll ever be able to forget.
There's no moon, perfect conditions for smugglers and human traffickers trying to move fuel, weapons and people.
The valleys in between, they're some of the main smuggling routes.
After days of negotiation, a major smuggler here has agreed to meet us.
The families that we've spoken to of people who have died trying to cross into Europe, they say you're a murderer. Are you a murderer?
No.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Begum was 15 when she left East London with 2 school friends to join Islamic State in Syria.
Do you feel that you have committed a crime to the extent that you should serve time in a British prison?
I mean, I feel like the only crime I committed was coming here.
If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. I can take the heat. The second thing that Harry Truman said, was in politics, if you want a friend, get a dog.
My children will love a dog.
In Tel Aviv, a constant streak of interceptions filled the night sky as waves of missiles came in.
It appears to be a very, very large and sustained attack on Israel.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
A police force has apologised.
If you wanted to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
The Church of England is facing a fresh crisis tonight, with the Diocese of Liverpool saying their own bishop's position is untenable. This follows allegation of sexual assault and harassment. The Right Reverend Dr. John Perambula has denied these claims, which emerged in a Channel 4 investigation. Our Communities correspondent Lisa Holland has this report.
So obviously, when we speak about justice, we are talking about doing justice as Christians.
This is John Perumbalath, the Bishop of Liverpool. Senior figures from within his own diocese and the wider church have spoken of their shock at the allegations he is facing from 2 women. Now, those claims have brought fresh calls for the Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, to resign. He is currently carrying out the most senior duties in the Church of England. In a statement, the Bishop of Newcastle, Dr. Helen Ann Hartley, said, "Yet again, failures at the heart of the institution of the Church of England, and specifically by its leadership, undermine credibility and confidence in the Church. I have already spoken out in the strongest terms about safeguarding failures and do so again. My views have not changed, including those regarding the position of the Archbishop of York." 2 women have made allegations against John Perumbalath, the Bishop of Liverpool. The first claims he assaulted her on 3 separate occasions between 2019 and 2023, when he was a bishop in Essex. It's claimed in January 2023 she reported her concerns to the church there. It's also claimed the Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, was made aware of the allegations. The church's own safeguarding team found there was no ongoing issue. John Perumbalath was made Bishop of Liverpool in April of the same year. He was interviewed voluntarily by Essex Police about the allegations in March last year. They said there was not enough evidence to prosecute. A second woman, a bishop, accused Mr. Perumbalath of sexually harassing her, but was told by the church she needed to have complained within a year of the alleged incident. The former Victims Commissioner, Dame Vera Baird, has repeatedly called for an overhaul of the regulation of complaints in the church.
It's been dealt with totally internally by people who protect the hierarchy over the people it should be serving. But what is shocking is, frankly, that the Church of England has got so foul that there are these repeated allegations again and again and again, which are not dealt with properly.
The Church of England is still reeling from the resignation of the Archbishop of Canterbury last November. Justin Welby was forced to step down after a report concluded he could and should have done more in the case of paedophile John Smythe, who for years sexually and physically abused more than 120 boys and young men.
A spokesperson for the Church of England says anyone who comes forward to make a complaint will be taken seriously. But insiders say the Church is facing an existential crisis over its handling of safeguarding issues.
John Pirumbalath has denied any wrongdoing and says he has learnt lessons about how his actions are perceived. But that won't ease mounting pressure on the Church of England from outside and within. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
In response to that story, a spokesperson for the Archbishop of York said in a comment, the Archbishop of York, Stephen Cotterill, is committed to the work of securing independent scrutiny of safeguarding, the changing of culture and the revisiting of policies in light of learning and critical examination of the Church of England. This will be achieved through committed action undertaken consistently. It will not be achieved overnight. In other news today, the winner of Love Island, Jack Fincham, has been released on bail pending an appeal hours after being jailed over a dog attack. The 32-year-old who won the show back in 2018 with Danny Dyer pleaded guilty to 2 counts of being in charge of a dangerously out-of-control dog. This is after his cane Corso attacked a man while he was running. He was also ordered to pay £2,000 in costs, a fine of £961 and £200 in compensation. Buckingham Palace has announced that Princess Beatrice has given birth to a daughter, several weeks premature. The baby, named Athena, was born last week, weighing 4 pounds 5 ounces and is said to be healthy and doing well. And firefighters were called to Manchester City's Etihad Stadium tonight because of a blaze at a merchandise stand. It happened hours before their crucial Champions League tie with Club Brugge, with Pep Guardiola's side needing a win to qualify for the next round. The fire has been extinguished and the game kicked off on time. Captain Sir Tom Moore's name has been removed from the charity that was set up in his honour. The Captain Tom Foundation will now be known as 1189808, the organisation's official charity number. Well, Sky's Ashna Hurinag is here with me. And Ashna, the name removed because the foundation has come under a lot of scrutiny and criticism.
Yes, they have. In November, the Charity Commission found that Hannah Ingram Moore, so Tom's daughter, and her husband Colin, former directors of the foundation, they found that there was a repeated pattern of behaviour, that they were essentially benefiting to a degree that was seemingly unethical in many of the sort of watchdogs' perception. The public felt misled was essentially what they found. Among the financial benefits that they had got included a spa and home cinema complex, which had to be destroyed last year. They benefited from a £1.4 million book deal, and £18,000 was how much they were charging for an awards ceremony appearance. And the pair were disqualified after being charity trustees last year. And at the time of the report, a spokesperson from the foundation said that they were requesting that the couple rectify matters by returning the funds due to the charity. Captain Sir Tom, of course, became famous during the COVID-19 pandemic. He was the much respected pensioner who was walking up and down his garden.
He was the good news everybody needed during that time, wasn't he?
He was, and he raised almost £39 million for the NHS. It's worth saying the money that Captain Sir Tom raised before the foundation was formed was not what was looked into as part of the Commission's inquiry. The foundation was formed 2 months after that walk began. But now, as the Charity Commission say, the blurring of boundaries between private and charitable interests has led to this name change.
OK, Ashna, thank you. Ashna Hurinag there. Still to come on the programme, the new blood test that could revolutionise the early detection of dementia. And I'll speak to the 11-year-old boy from Bradford who set up a food bank from his garden shed. Hello, welcome back. A simple blood test that could detect dementia at an earlier stage is being trialled on the NHS. Scientists say it could be a game changer and significantly change the way the disease is treated. Our science and medical correspondent Thomas Moore reports.
Can you name these animals? Can you name this one?
Stephanie struggles with her words these days.
This one's a high, I cannot say it, no, I can't say that word.
Her mum had Alzheimer's disease and doctors think she may face the same problems with thinking and processing.
I just don't remember anything. It's just gone. I don't know if I could have some sort of tablets to take. If I take a tablet and that starts it and it keeps my memory keeping my brain really still, working and remembering.
Stephanie is now one of the first to take part in a new study of a simple blood test that could diagnose dementia in its early stages. The Blood Biomarker Challenge will look at a series of proteins thought to be hallmarks of different forms of the disease, including Alzheimer's. Several thousand patients will be invited to take part, with the aim of having an NHS-verified blood test within 5 years.
Just 2 in every 100 patients with Alzheimer's disease currently get a formal diagnosis, either with a specialist brain scanner or a sample of fluid taken from their spines. The problem is, at the moment, the NHS doesn't have enough machines or trained staff, and that's why a blood test could make all the difference.
A cheap and accurate diagnostic test is all the more important now that new drugs can slow the progress of dementia. So far, they're too costly for the NHS, but more are coming.
There are a whole load of other drugs under development that are likely to come, be licensed and potentially available on the NHS over the next few years. Now, those drugs are suitable for people who have fairly early levels of memory impairment, so we need to get the diagnosis right to see if people are eligible and will benefit from those drugs.
Just under 1 million people in the UK have some form of dementia. Many wait years for a diagnosis, if they get one at all.
Dementia is the UK's biggest killer, and what we know at the moment is that many people are not getting a diagnosis. About a third of people in this country do not get a diagnosis. But the Blood Biomarker Challenge is about revolutionising the diagnostic pathway, and the blood test is a key part of that.
If you can copy this cube.
For patients like Stephanie, a proper diagnosis will help her to get support and perhaps future treatment to live well now and into the future. Thomas Moore, Sky News in Oxford.
Let's talk now to Charlie Starmer-Smith, whose father is former England rugby player and commentator Nigel Starmer-Smith. Nigel now lives with frontal lobe dementia. And Charlie, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us about this, because dementia is such a long, hard road for those living with it and those supporting those living with it. And it makes a change to talk about something positive when it comes to dementia. What were your initial thoughts when you heard about this trial?
I mean, it's hugely welcoming news. I think the biggest challenge for those diagnosed with dementia and the families around them is quite often there is no official diagnosis. I mean, my father's had dementia for 10 years. He was never diagnosed. I think there's a third of people in Britain who've never been properly diagnosed. And that is the hardest thing, because there's no time to prepare.
Why is that? Why aren't people properly diagnosed?
I mean, I think there is a gold standard test, which around 2% of people get or have been able to get access to, which can officially diagnose it. And then what you're left with for the other 98% is a sense of being in denial about it, not being ready to cope with the physical, the financial and the mental impact that dementia has for so many people.
It's just seen as an inevitable decline for particularly older people, perhaps.
I think so. But as the report said, there's nearly 1 million people suffering with dementia. It's the biggest killer in the UK. And the cost of it is huge. And therefore, I would have expected, in this day and age of modern scientific breakthroughs, that we'd be at this point already. But, however, it is welcome news. I think the other thing to consider is that when this comes through, there's also a whole raft of drugs and improvements that are coming out and may be licensed. There is also a generation who are yet to be diagnosed, who may still yet receive the early diagnosis that you need to be able to get access to those drugs. And I think that's going to be a real challenge, is how quickly can this turn into something actually in the NHS that everyone can access.
Yeah, because an early and a clear diagnosis, key, not just for treatment, you said, but for a long-term plan, not just for the person diagnosed, but for the people around them, because it's a very British thing, isn't it? We don't talk about our health. We don't talk about when we die. You know, the amount of people I talk to say, oh, we haven't got a will, we haven't got any of that in place. We don't like talking about it, we don't like confronting it. But to have all of this, well, you can give an insight into what living with dementia is like, living in that family, because the struggles are real, and if you're not prepared for them, it can be even harder.
Absolutely. I mean, my father was commentating in March of 2015. By September, he couldn't string a sentence together.
Yeah,
so within 6 months. For my mother, who was a very stoic and strong lady, it was devastating. She'd be in denial. And then there's the mental anguish, there's the physical impact of trying to deal with someone, because for some people, types of dementia, your physical ability to move goes very quickly. For my father, it was overnight. On a Sunday, he was kicking the ball in the garden with my son. On the Monday, he couldn't stand up when he sat in a chair. And that has an impact where you're desperately looking for support for people who are suffering the same as you. I think it was only when my dad moved into a specialist dementia home where you see other families like yours, you see other people going through the same troubles, and this was COVID time where you couldn't even visit. It was very traumatic. I mean, sadly, my mother became very ill. I have no doubt that it was a contributing factor was the effort and anguish she had looking after my father.
And Charlie, in terms of this trial, if it is successful, is this something that you would like to see, not just for people who are developing symptoms, but for those whose family have a history of dementia? Because, you know, if you have a relative with dementia, it will be in the back of your own mind.
100%. I think, you know, for my wife, Katie, for my kids, and every other family who's been touched by it, you know, you go to the cash point and you forget your PIN number, or you forget someone's name and you think, is this the start of something a bit sinister? Now, I'm in my mid-40s, but it's a question that I have, and I would love to get that peace of mind of knowing categorically that I am not susceptible to it, or if I am, that I can plan with my family to deal with it, because it's a tough, cruel road for those who can't.
Yeah. And a simple blood test could mean so much. Listen, Charlie, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us. Actually, you want to mention an initiative that you're part of, because I know that music has really helped you.
It has. I mean, music has. And also recently I started an initiative called the Sports Commentators, which is in memory of Dad. And it is producing frames of all the commentary notes for all the greatest matches. And it's had incredible support from across the sporting world, including all the Sky commentators. So it's lovely to do something positive.
Listen, Charlie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Right, still to come on the programme, Bridget's back. We're going to be heading to the red carpet in central London for the return of everyone's favourite singleton. And coming up in the sports, Steven Gerrard leaving Saudi Arabia after just 18 months in the Gulf state. More details on the way.
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, okay?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against, that the wind is the really big problems. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
Sunday, exclusively on Peacock, with the top of the Premier League still unsettled.
This duo have been in a league of their own.
Two clubs desperately scramble to climb the table.
The blockbuster fixture.
Arsenal.
Just what Arsenal needed.
Manchester City.
Chance for Haaland. Goal for Haaland.
This is the Premier League. Sunday, 11:30 Eastern, only on Peacock.
Coming up, we're going to head to the red carpet in central London for the return of Bridget Jones. Sorry, Teddy and I were just laughing about that because I said it's got good reviews, and Teddy went, really? Not your cup of tea, Bridget Jones?
I have seen bits of it, yeah. My wife enjoys it. I've seen it, yeah.
Oh, come on. It's the day and age where...
I like Hugh Grant.
Yeah, Hugh Grant's very good at it, very good at it. But yeah, it's getting really good reviews, so looking forward to that one. We'll be on the red carpet with the stars. But first, we're going to talk about, well, a big former Premier League star, Steven Gerrard, out in Saudi Arabia. Well, he could be heading back. He's requested to leave the club, I think is how it's been put.
Well, mutual consent is what we're reporting out at Sky Sports. He has left Al Ettifaq, which is the Saudi Arabian club where he's been since June 2023. Actually signed an extended contract in 2024, around a year ago, January 2024. But the club currently sitting 12th in the Saudi Pro League out of 18 teams. Won just 5 of 17 games this season. They've won, I think, 2 of the last 14 and not one since the winter break, which is curious. They have a winter break in Saudi Arabia. You thought they'd be playing at this time. It was probably the best time to get the games in. But nonetheless, they've decided under mutual consent for him to leave. It's around £15 million a year. Third managerial job as a player. He retired in 2016, won everything but the Premier League, including the Champions League, swashbuckling midfielder for England. But he's had maybe an indifferent management career. Third job, he started at Rangers, did a great thing, won the title for them in 2021, first title in a decade. But then he had the situation at Aston Villa, just won 13 of 40 games. Now they're doing so well under his successor.
Say, where does he go from here? Before we were talking about Bridget Jones, we were actually talking about this story. And we were just saying, you know, when he left Aston Villa, I mean, well, Aston Villa are doing great now without him. And I wonder if that's tarnished his record back here. Where do you think he'll go? Could he go to a Premier League club, another English club, do you think?
It'd be a tricky one, won't it, as you say, because they were Aston Villa around the bottom of the league when he left. Now Unai Emery's got them in the Champions League. They're going to go through to the knockout stages, regardless of what happens tonight against Celtic. We'll update you on the second. A great game at Villa Park at the moment. You wonder if he'll be always that big name for a developing league, potentially, always a legendary figure. But like people like Wayne Rooney, his contemporaries, Frank Lampard, still maybe making their name as a head coach. So that situation for Gerrard. He won the Champions League. Of course, we'll update you on those crucial games in a second.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
The end of a playing career doesn't always mean the end of a journey in football. Tom Reynolds took a completely different route.
I joined Charlton Athletic at the age of 9 and then stayed there for 3 seasons and left around 12. And then the next year I joined West Ham, played just for 1 season and then got released. It wasn't a tough release, it was just basically you're not good enough, and that was fine. I'd played football for 10 years. I wanted to use that knowledge and go into something, and everyone that weren't making it as footballers were going into coaching and going into managers or physiotherapists, and for me it was a case that I was like, there must be something else.
From Reading and Charlton to working in analytics, then on to Russia with Lokomotiv Moscow and Germany with Eintracht Frankfurt. Tom has spent over a decade behind the scenes in football.
At the time, I'd never heard of performance analysis. It was only until I went to university that I knew that was an avenue. Performance analysis can lead to 5, 6, 7 different roles now.
Do you ever now miss playing?
Yeah, I think I still find it where I'm talking to a player or I'm talking to a coach where players are around and you see them going out on the football pitch and you're the one dragging the equipment or setting up the equipment and you're like, just want to put my boots on and get involved again. But I mean, there's a reason as to why I didn't become a professional footballer, and that was because I wasn't good enough.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Now, my next guest tonight is the youngest person ever to feature on the Big Issues Changemakers list. At 11 years old, Travis Robinson from Bradford was nominated after setting up a food bank with his dad 2 years ago. Starting with a Facebook page, the Robinsons delivered hundreds of donations to charities across Bradford within weeks. He was nominated by the magician Dynamo, who is also from Bradford. I'm very glad to say that Travis and his dad, Craig, join me now. Good evening to you both. Hello.
Hi. Hello, good evening.
Well, first of all, congratulations to you both. Travis, I want to find out how this all started. Tell me.
So basically, one day I was coming back from school and me and my dad were going to an Aldi to get some like groceries and stuff like that. And as we pull into the driveway, we see a homeless person. Well, I see a homeless person near the doors, begging for change. And I go up to him. Then I go back to my dad and ask him, "Hey, Dad, can I have some money, please?" He gives me the money. I walk back over to the homeless person and I put it in his cup. Then the homeless person says, "Thank you. I can have my tea tonight." And we get all the stuff and that. And just as we're exiting the doors, my dad turns to me and says, "Hey, Travis, I think we should start a food bank." That's basically where it all comes from.
Oh, well, Craig, you must be so proud of Travis in terms of just the compassion that he showed to that one man, and both of you deciding that actually you can do a bit more than just dropping a bit of money in a cup. Where did it go from there, Craig? Tell me.
Well, we just started a Facebook page, didn't we?
Yeah.
Asked for donations from friends, family and other people that joined. And, well, we couldn't have done it without them, could we? No. To be fair, it's not just about us, to be honest with you. We couldn't have done it, without the other donations. So, yeah.
So, Travis, you've been running for 2 years now. How much work goes into this? How much time do you spend on it? And how many people do you help? I can see you lining up here. This must have been around Easter. Plenty of Easter eggs there.
So we've been doing it for quite a bit of time, and we've done quite a lot. The reason we've been doing... Start that again, please.
Yeah, go for it. Go on.
Please.
It takes a lot of it's a lot of time and a lot of effort into love. You know what I mean? Obviously he's got schoolwork as well, so we help and chip in there. But Travis is the main driving force of our team, to be honest.
At one part, when the food bank was really thriving, like every week we'd go to a nearest supermarket and we'd like buy a whole bunch of like stuff for the homeless. Yeah. And considering that it was around Easter, we would get like entire boxes.
Like Easter eggs and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you're both doing incredible work for your community. And Travis, how did the magician Dynamo find out about you? He's another Bradford lad.
I don't really know, actually. No one really told me.
Yeah, I think by magic. So I think obviously he's from Bradford as well. He's Stephen, and he contacted us and wanted to meet you, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did he contribute? Did he give a donation? Did he do a few magic tricks for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't give away any details. It would be magic otherwise.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming onto the show to tell us all about it, and congratulations on being the youngest ever changemaker on the Big Issues list. It's such an achievement, and well done to you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you. What an incredible effort from both of them. Well, it has been a long time coming, but Bridget Jones is back again. It is the 4th film in the franchise, which is coming to our screens next month, with Renee Zellweger and Hugh Grant reuniting more than 20 years after the first film. Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, had its red carpet premiere in London tonight, and the star of the show was asked what she thinks is so special about Bridget.
I mean, for me, reading the books, I don't know, like a lot of people, I think I see myself in her experiences, and in, I don't know, I think a lot of people relate to you know, the challenges that she finds her way through and her vulnerability. You know, I think she feels like an old friend to me, you know. I think that I share that with a lot of people. Helen's created somebody that I think a lot of people, I don't know, find endearing, and she just has this gift of mining these moments that seem universally and cross-generationally relatable. You know, it's what a special thing. Thanks, Helen.
Oh, really looking forward to it. Early reviews are in and they are good. Well, that is all from us on the UK Tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Coming up next, it is The World with Jonathan Samuels. We'll see you tomorrow night at 8.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.